My name is Evelyn Hart, 31 years old. If you looked at my life on paper, you'd probably think I'd made it. I work as a software developer for a big tech company in San Francisco, the kind of place with glass walls, free cold brew, and people who treat pushing a hotfix at 2 a.m. like a personality trait. The pay is good, the benefits are great, and my resume makes recruiters practically drool in my inbox. I also own a large apartment in Soma with a view of the bay, floor-to-ceiling windows, custom walnut furniture, stone countertops, the whole sleek, minimalist package people post on Instagram with captions like blessed and hustle pays off. It's the kind of place people picture when they dream about leaving their small hometown and starting over in the city. But what they don't picture is the noise. The sirens that scream all night, the constant traffic, drunk conversations at 2 in the morning right below your window, the neighbor's music seeping through the wall like it's part of your bloodstream, the way your brain never really shuts off because there's always something humming, honking, yelling, vibrating. I hadn't slept properly in months. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling while blue city light leaked through the blinds, thinking about variables and deadlines and the faint, heavy pressure in my chest that never went away. I'd worked so hard to get everything I was supposed to want. So why did I feel like I was suffocating inside my own success? I kept telling myself it was just a phase, a rough sprint at work, seasonal stress, burnout that a long weekend could fix. But one night, around 3 in the morning, as an ambulance wailed past for the 5th time, it hit me with a painful clarity. I didn't hate my job. I hated my life wrapped around it. I hated the city that never stopped demanding my nervous system's attention. And under all that, there was another layer I didn't like to admit. It wasn't just strangers draining me, it was family too. My parents lived about 40 minutes away in the same house I grew up in. My older sister Jennifer lived closer to them. She was 38, divorced, with 3 kids under 12, and a permanent sense of urgency. Somewhere along the line, Evelyn's doing well had quietly turned into, Evelyn will fix it. I tried to ignore it, but that night, exhausted and wired, I opened a real estate website and typed in country house near San Francisco quiet. I didn't expect much. I was just fantasizing. But a week later, I was standing in the doorway of a small cottage an hour outside the city, listening to birds instead of sirens, smelling pine instead of car exhaust. The realtor watched me carefully, like she knew what this meant. "It has high-speed internet," she said. "You could easily work from home here." High-speed internet. That was honestly all my company cared about. The house wasn't big, but it was cozy. A yard with a few trees. Neighbors far enough away that you couldn't count their eyelashes through the window. A porch where you could actually hear yourself think. I walked from room to room and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, my shoulders lowering. "I'll take it," I heard myself say, while the rational part of my brain was still doing math in the background. The math wasn't pretty. I could afford the mortgage, but it would be tight. Tight enough that any emergency would send everything crashing down. I drove back to the city with that thought ricocheting around in my head, past the glittering skyline that everyone photographed like it was a promise. And then the obvious solution slid into place. My Soma apartment was worth a lot. People would pay a small fortune to live there, to listen to sirens from the 32nd floor and say they were living the dream. If I rented it out, the income could cover most, if not all, of the mortgage on the country house. One life would quietly fund the other. I contacted a management company a coworker recommended. Michael, the manager, met me in a cafe and talked me through their process, background checks, employment verification, reference calls. He was methodical, organized, and almost aggressively polite. I also had a lawyer draw up a lease that didn't mess around. Strict rules, penalties for damage, clear boundaries. No ambiguity, no "but we're family" loopholes. I poured money into renovating the apartment so it would be irresistible. Fresh paint, deep cleaning, updated fixtures. I installed a modern security system too. Cameras, smart locks, notifications straight to my phone. As I held the new key card in my hand, a memory flickered. The day I handed my mother a spare key, just in case of emergencies. At the time, it felt like the responsible thing to do. Now, something inside me whispered that I should have asked what qualified as an emergency in her mind. But I pushed that thought away. I had bigger things to worry about. After setting everything up, I drove out to my parents' house to tell them my plan. My dad was in his usual spot in the living room, half watching TV and half reading the news on his tablet. My mom was in the kitchen, the smell of tea and something fried drifting through the house. For a moment, walking in, I was a kid again, except now I was the one with the big news. "So," I said, sitting down across from my dad, "I bought a house." My mom appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "A house? Where?" "About an hour from here," I said. "In the country. It's quiet. I can work from home there, and I'm going to rent out my apartment in the city to cover the mortgage." My dad's face lit up. "That's smart, Evelyn. Really smart. You're thinking ahead." My mom didn't smile. Her brows knit together instead. "You're going to let strangers live in that place?" she asked. "All that money you put in, all that furniture, all those things. What if they destroy it?" "That's why I hired a management company," I explained. "They'll screen people properly, and the lease protects me. If they damage anything, they pay." She shook her head, unconvinced. "Strangers don't care like family does." I almost laughed, if only she heard herself. Before I could answer, the front door burst open. "Grandma!" 3 small bodies barreled into the living room, voices rising, shoes thudding on the floor. Behind them came Jennifer, holding a grocery bag and her phone at the same time, hair thrown up in a loose knot like she'd had no time, ever, to breathe. "Hey," she said, dropping down onto the couch beside me as her kids immediately started poking at the TV, the coffee table, the remote controls. "What are you guys talking about?" "Your sister," my mom said, with a little tilt of pride in her voice now, "bought a country house, and she's renting out the apartment in the city." Jennifer's eyes widened. "The one in Soma? With the view of the bay?" "Yeah," I said carefully. "I'm going to list it through the management company." Jennifer's face shifted. Curiosity to excitement to calculation, all in a heartbeat. She sat up straighter. "You should rent it to me," she said. "To me and the kids." I blinked. "What?" "Our place is tiny," she said, launching into it like she'd been waiting her whole life for this opening. 2 bedrooms, 3 kids. It's insane, Evie. They're practically sleeping on top of each other. Your place is huge, and it's in a better school district. The kids would finally have a chance." I felt my mother's gaze slide to me, warm, expectant. "I'm renting it out to pay the mortgage on the house," I said. "I need the income, Jen. I can't just—" "Charge me a little," she cut in. "Family discount. You don't have to make a profit, just enough so you don't feel guilty about it." "This isn't about guilt," I said, trying not to let my voice sharpen. "It's about numbers. I need that rent at market rate. Otherwise it doesn't work." The friendly curve of Jennifer's mouth vanished. "Seriously?" she said slowly. "You're going to charge your own sister full rent?" "Yes," I said. "That's how renting works." "You make way more money than I do," she snapped. "You have a fancy job, 2 properties, and you're squeezing me for cash like I'm some stranger off the street." My mother stepped in like clockwork. "Evelyn, your sister has 3 children," she said. "You should help her. God blesses those who share what they have." "God also blesses common sense," I said. "I'm not running a charity. This is an investment. I worked for it. I need it to pay for itself." "You don't understand what it's like." Jennifer's voice rose. "You live in your perfect little apartment thinking about code and bonuses and vacations. I'm doing everything alone. I have real responsibilities, real problems." I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late at the office, all the weekends I'd skipped out on things to hit deadlines, all the times I'd told myself later when it came to my own life. Apparently none of that counted as real. "My answer is no," I said. "The apartment will go to proper tenants through the management company. That's final." Jennifer stared at me like she didn't recognize me. My mom's expression hardened into something sour and disappointed. "You've changed," Jennifer said. "You used to care about us." "I still care," I said quietly. "But I'm not going to destroy my future to fix choices I didn't make." "You're ungrateful," she snapped as I stood up. "We're family, and you're acting like we're nothing." I didn't trust myself to answer without saying something I couldn't take back. So I left. I drove back through familiar streets, my mom's voice echoing in my head. Strangers, family, God, sharing. Guilt pressed against my ribs, but underneath it was steel. I knew if I gave in once, it would never end. A week later, I moved into the country house. The first night, I lay in bed and heard nothing. No cars, no yelling, no sirens. Just the faint rustle of leaves and my own breathing. Silence was so loud it almost scared me. Then it wrapped around me like a blanket, and for the first time in months, I slept. A few days later, Michael called. "Evelyn, great news," he said. "I found the perfect tenants for your apartment. A couple of engineers. Solid jobs, excellent credit. They love the photos. They want to see the place on Friday at 2. Relief flooded me. Everything was falling into place. The city apartment would pay for this quiet life. Maybe, finally, I could exist without feeling like someone's emergency fund with a pulse. Friday afternoon, I drove back into the city, the skyline rising up like a promise and a threat. I met Michael and the couple in the lobby. Polite handshakes, professional smiles, quick small talk about traffic and weather. We took the elevator up together, Michael chatting about the building amenities while I pictured the apartment spotless, staged, ready. I slid the key card, heard the soft click of the lock, and pushed the door open with a practiced smile. "Please come." The words died in my throat. My apartment looked like a storm had swallowed it and spat it back out. The elegant walnut coffee table I'd paid way too much for was shoved against the wall, a half-open cereal box, and a sweating milk carton sitting on top of it. The sofa was buried under a cartoon blanket, the kind with bright colors and big-eyed characters. The floor was a minefield of plastic toys, snack wrappers, and stray socks. And sitting in the middle of it all, in my clothes, on my couch, in my home, was Jennifer. She was in sweatpants, one leg tucked under her, a bowl of chips balanced on her stomach, watching cartoons on my giant TV like she'd lived there for years. She looked up at me, unbothered, mildly annoyed at being interrupted. "Oh," she said casually, crunching a chip. "You're here early." Behind me, I heard the tenants suck in a quiet breath. I didn't move. I just stood there in the doorway, staring at my destroyed apartment, and felt something inside me crack. For a moment, nobody breathed. Michael took a tiny step back. The couple exchanged a quick, alarmed glance. And Jennifer, my sister, the woman currently trespassing in my home, sighed like I was the one inconveniencing her. Emma, her youngest, was on the floor with my $400 art book open like it was a coloring pad, dragging a crayon across the page in furious zigzags. The other 2 kids were running laps around the dining table, laughing, knocking into chairs, leaving smudges on every glossy surface. I swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" Jennifer blinked innocently. "Living," she said. "Mom gave me the spare key. We moved in yesterday. This is our home now." "Our home. Our..." Mr. Chen cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should leave." "No, wait, please." I tried, but he was already guiding his wife toward the hall with polite urgency, like someone escaping a crime scene. "I'm sorry," he said to me, genuinely. "This situation seems complicated." Complicated was a generous word. Michael glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. His face was a mix of shock, apology, and "I don't get paid enough for this." He gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder before following the tenants out. The door clicked shut. Silence. Except for the cartoons blasting, the kids yelling, and my heartbeat pounding so hard it felt like it was in my ears. I stepped inside slowly. "Get out." Jennifer laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't be dramatic. We're family." "This is my apartment. You are trespassing." She popped another chip into her mouth. "Not trespassing. Mom said we could stay here, and Mom is family, so it's family property." I stared at her. "That's not how ownership works." "Oh my God," she groaned. "You and your money rules. Just relax. We're only here temporarily. Besides," she waved her chip bowl vaguely around, "it's not like you live here anymore." I felt something unfamiliar rise in me. Not anger, not even rage. Something colder, heavier, a sense of finality. "Jennifer," I said, keeping my voice level, "you need to leave, right now." She rolled her eyes and turned back to the TV. "If you don't like it, call the police." The words left her mouth lightly, thoughtlessly, like she was tossing a match over her shoulder without checking if she was standing in a field of dry grass. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. Jennifer froze. The kids didn't understand what was happening. They kept playing, but Jennifer shot up from the couch, panic blooming across her face. "Evie, no, wait, stop, what are you doing?" The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency?" "I need to report an illegal entry into my apartment," I said clearly, staring right at Jennifer. "Several individuals entered without my permission and are refusing to leave." Jennifer's eyes widened. "Evelyn, hang up. Hang up the phone right now." The kids sensed her panic and stopped running. Their eyes flicked from her to me, confused, frightened. I gave the operator my address, unit number, confirmed I'd meet officers in the lobby, and ended the call. "I cannot believe you," Jennifer whispered, voice cracking. "I'm your sister." "You told me to call the police," I said. "So I did." "You're insane," she snapped. "You're heartless." "Get your kids ready," I said. "The officers will be here soon." I turned and walked toward the door. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the handle to steady myself. But something in me, something tired, bruised, and done, held firm. I left the apartment, stepped into the elevator, and let the doors close on Jennifer's panicked shouting. 10 minutes later, 2 officers walked into the lobby. Officer Martinez, older, steady. Officer Thompson, younger, sharper edges. I stood up as they approached. "I'm Evelyn Hart," I said, handing over my ID, "owner of apartment 714. I pulled up the digital ownership documents. Martinez scanned them, nodding. "All right," he said, "let's go have a look." We went upstairs. My hands had mostly stopped shaking. Mostly. I opened the door. Jennifer was standing there, stiff and pale, with all 3 kids clinging to her legs. Officer Martinez stepped inside. "Ma'am, the owner of this property has requested that you leave. You need to gather your belongings and exit the premises." Jennifer's voice trembled. "This is a family issue. She's my sister." "Family relationships are not legally relevant here," Officer Thompson said. "If the owner asks you to leave and you refuse, you are trespassing." Jennifer's face twisted. "You don't understand. I'm a single mom. I have nowhere to go. She's throwing us out to chase money." "This isn't about money," I said quietly. "It's about boundaries." She snapped. "Boundaries? You have everything. Everything. And you can't even let me stay in one apartment? You're ruining my life." Then she lunged at me. It happened fast, but the officers were faster. Thompson grabbed her arm, pulling her back as she screamed. Martinez stepped in to help as she struggled, wild and furious, screaming that I was heartless, evil, the worst person alive. The kids were crying now, loud, panicked sobs that sliced through the air. Within seconds, Jennifer's hands were pinned behind her back, cuffed. She collapsed to her knees, still yelling, tears streaming down her face. "You're under arrest for trespassing and resisting an officer," Martinez said calmly. "Evie," she sobbed. "Please, please, don't do this. My kids, Evie." My phone rang. "Mom." I put it on speaker. "Hello, Evelyn, what have you done?" she shrieked before I could speak. "Jennifer texted me. The police? Are you insane?" "She told me to call them," I said. "So I did." "You monster!" my mother screamed. "She's your sister. Those are your nieces and nephew. How could you stand there and watch her get arrested?" "Mom," I said, voice steady. "You gave her my spare key without my permission. She broke into my apartment. She damaged my property. She refused to leave. She told me to call the police. This is the result of your choices, not mine." "You heartless girl," she spat. "You've always been cold, always selfish, always—" I hung up. The officers lifted Jennifer to her feet. Her face was blotchy, streaked with tears. I stepped closer, not close enough to touch her, just close enough that she had to hear me clearly. "You will never enter my life or my property again without permission," I said quietly. "From now on, Mom and Dad can take responsibility for you and your kids, not me." She stared at me like I'd stabbed her. The officers led her out. The kids cried after her, reaching with little arms that shook. I walked out behind them, numb. My parents arrived 30 minutes later. Mom went straight to the kids, cooing, crying, acting like they were the victims of some natural disaster. My dad stood in the living room staring at the chaos. Broken crayons, spilled cereal, crushed chips grinding into the carpet. "What did you do?" he asked, voice low, wounded. "I protected my property," I said, "legally." "We're family, Evelyn." "I've heard that word too many times," I said. "You made Jennifer this way. You protected her from consequences until she believed she could take anything she wanted. That ends today." Mom glared at me with pure hatred. "You are not our daughter." A strange sensation washed over me. Relief. "Good," I said. "We finally agree on something." They gathered the kids, rushed them out, and disappeared down the hall. I stood alone in my destroyed apartment. There was no guilt, no regret, just cold, hard clarity. That same day, I called a locksmith. I replaced every lock. I boxed Jennifer's belongings and sent them to my parents' address. The next morning, Michael called, voice full of sympathy and guilt. "I'm so sorry about yesterday. I'll find you better tenants, I promise." I sat in my country house afterward, listening to the stillness. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips. Silence, real silence. It felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. The first week after everything collapsed was strangely quiet. No calls from my parents, no messages from Jennifer, not a single attempt to apologize, negotiate, or guilt trip me back into the role I'd played my entire life. The fixer, the responsible one, the emotional shock absorber. It was as if I had ceased to exist for them. And honestly, it felt peaceful. I didn't say that out loud to anyone. I barely admitted it to myself. But every night, I sat on my small wooden porch, overlooking the trees that framed my new country house like a painting, and I breathed in the stillness like medicine. Around sunset, the wind would move through the branches in slow waves, the cicadas starting up like a living soundtrack, and for the first time in years, I could feel my thoughts stretching out without running into walls or noise. I went on longer walks. I cooked more. I slept deeper. It was like discovering a part of myself I didn't know I'd lost. The only thing that rattled me was the absence of everything else. For decades, my phone had been a constant chorus of family drama. Jennifer needing money. Mom hinting that I didn't visit enough. Dad asking me to come help fix something around the house, since you're good with tech. Birthdays, emergencies, arguments, reconciliations, babysitting, crises, always crises. But now, nothing. Michael called on and off, always apologizing again for the disaster during the showing, though none of it was his fault. He promised again and again that he would find the perfect tenants. And then one morning, about 2 weeks later, he did. "Evelyn," he said, excitement bubbling in his voice, "I've found them." "Found who?" "The perfect tenants. Better than the last couple." I raised an eyebrow even though he couldn't see me. "Better how?" "A Japanese executive couple," he said. "They're relocating for work. Very polite, excellent references, spotless credit, and, this is the best part, they want to pay 20% above market rate and 2 years of rent in advance." I almost dropped my coffee. 2 years, I repeated, in advance? Yes, they said they want stability and zero stress. They love the apartment. Already saw it with me yesterday. They're ready to sign. I'll send you the contracts in about an hour. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Because the truth? This felt like the universe handing me a reward after surviving a war. Not a small one, a massive one. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen staring at the sunlight hitting the counter. Everything was warm, golden, peaceful. The kind of peace that felt earned. By noon, the money hit my account. My mortgage was covered for 2 years. My savings finally stopped bleeding. My anxiety loosened its grip. And for the first time since I'd bought the country house, I could breathe without calculating numbers in my head. But even peace felt unfamiliar at first, like wearing a shirt that wasn't broken in yet. So I booked a flight to Hawaii. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know explanations anymore. I packed swimsuits, sunscreen, 2 dresses, and a book I'd been meaning to read for months. And then I got on a plane and let myself disappear for a week. Maui was exactly what people dream it is. Warm water, soft air, sunsets like molten gold. For the first 2 days, I slept more than I sunbathed. The exhaustion of the last few months peeled away slowly, like layers of old skin. I swam. I read on the beach. I ate good food. I walked barefoot every morning. I let the waves replace the noise inside my head. Not once did I check my phone except to take photos. Not once did I think about my family louder than a passing thought. I felt lighter, newer, almost whole. When I returned to my country house, the silence waiting for me wasn't the heavy kind anymore. It felt like a friend. My routine slipped back together easily. Work during the day, long walks in the evenings, home-cooked dinners, while the sun dipped between the trees. My phone stayed quiet, a small miracle I didn't dare question. Weeks passed, then months. 6 months after Jennifer's arrest, I realized something shocking. I had not thought about her in days. My parents had not called once, not even a birthday message, not even a passive-aggressive, "hope you're doing well." They had cut me out completely, and I wasn't even sure I missed them. But the kids, sometimes the kids slipped into my mind like ghosts. Their little faces twisted in fear, their hands reaching for Jennifer as the officers led her away. The memory stabbed me every time it surfaced, even though I knew, logically, that their mother had created that scene, not me. Still, they were innocent. I didn't know if they blamed me. Maybe they did. Maybe they would forever. Maybe one day they'd grow up hearing one version of the story, my mother's, and believe I was some cold-hearted aunt who cared more about fancy furniture than family. The thought hurt, more than I expected, more than I wanted to admit. One quiet afternoon, as I was making tea, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the city code made something in my stomach tighten. I answered. "Hello?" "Evelyn, sweetheart," a familiar voice said warmly. "It's your Aunt Margaret." Relief washed over me. She lived in Boston, my mother's older sister, but she had always been different, sharper, less sentimental, less willing to put up with nonsense. "How are you?" I asked. "I'm fine, dear," she said, "but I wanted to talk to you about what happened with Jennifer." My chest tightened. "Aunt Margaret, I don't want to fight." "I'm not calling to scold you," she interrupted. "I heard the whole story. Your mother called me in tears, trying to make you sound like a monster. But I know her. And I know Jennifer. And I know you." I pressed my hand to my forehead. "Then you know I didn't have a choice." "I do," she said. "And for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "But," she continued, "I think you should know what's been happening since." I leaned against the counter. "Okay." "Well," she began. "Jennifer avoided formal criminal charges. First offense, 3 kids. Prosecutor didn't want to pursue it. But the arrest wasn't exactly a secret." "What do you mean?" "Word got around," she said. "Family members heard, friends heard. People stopped lending her money and offering help. They all agree she crossed a line." My fingers curled around the edge of the counter. "Her landlord found out about the arrest," Margaret continued, "refused to renew her lease." My stomach dropped. "So where is she now?" "In a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Poor schools, bad neighborhood, run-down building. It's not where she wanted to end up." "And my parents?" A pause. "They're embarrassed," she said finally. "They still help her sometimes, but not as much. Your mother is more worried about what people think than anything else, and they can't afford to keep bailing her out financially." "So Jennifer is basically on her own?" "Yes." I closed my eyes. The guilt hit me in a heavy wave, not because of Jennifer, but because of the children. Their innocent faces, their frightened tears. I swallowed. "The kids, are they okay?" "They're adjusting," Margaret said softly. "Kids are resilient, and they'll grow. They'll understand things one day." I didn't speak. After a moment, she continued, "Evelyn, listen to me. You don't owe your family your success. You don't owe them your savings, your apartment, your peace. You earned what you have. You made smart decisions. You protected yourself. That's not selfish. That's smart." Something inside me cracked open, something that had been locked up for years. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't have to sacrifice your life for a family that doesn't respect you," she said. "Remember that." "I'm trying." "I know you are." We talked about lighter things afterward. Work, her business, the weather. When we hung up, I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared out the window at the slow-moving branches. Something in me felt lighter, resolved, seen. But not all the way. Because even in my quiet home, even after months of peace, there was one wound I couldn't shake. The image of those children standing in my doorway, crying for their mother as she was handcuffed and led away. And the terrible truth that even now, part of me still wondered if I had gone too far, or if I had finally done just enough. 2 years passed. It startled me sometimes, how quickly peace can become normal when you stop fighting everyone else's battles. The quiet life I'd built in the country didn't feel strange anymore. It felt earned. It felt mine. The Japanese couple renting my apartment turned out to be dream tenants. For 2 years straight, they paid on time, kept everything immaculate, and sent occasional polite notes through Michael asking if a tiny thing, like replacing air filters early, was okay. Michael, who had practically aged from stress the day Jennifer destroyed my showing, now called me with nothing but good news every few months. "Your apartment is in excellent condition," he'd say. "They're extremely responsible. They want to renew the lease when the 2 years are up." The relief I felt each time never dulled. It never stopped feeling like justice. Meanwhile, work flourished. With the quiet of the country house, I was sharper, faster, more creative. I solved problems in half the time. I got promoted. Twice. My salary went up. I saved more. I slept better. My life finally felt like something I was living, not escaping from. My phone stayed silent. No surprise calls from Jennifer. No guilt-laced messages from Mom. No half-hearted updates from Dad. Sometimes weeks went by where I didn't think of them at all. Other times the memories hit me in sudden, sharp flashes. My mother screaming, "You are not our daughter." Jennifer crying as officers held her arms. The kids watching with tears the size of pearls. Those weren't memories you forgot. They were memories you learned to coexist with. Still, I didn't reach out. I didn't open that door again. Not even a crack. Not after everything it had cost me to close it. The updates, when they came, arrived through the only family member I trusted to be honest, Aunt Margaret. She called maybe every 3 months, never intruding, never pressing, just checking in like someone who genuinely cared about me without expecting anything in return. And she always delivered the news straightforwardly. "Your parents sold the old house," she said once. "They couldn't afford it anymore." Another time, "Jennifer is still in that rundown apartment, working 2 part-time jobs to get by." Another, "The kids are in public school. They're surviving. Not thriving, but surviving." Each time, my heart tugged just a little. Not for Jennifer, she had crafted her own downfall with years of entitlement, but for the children who had been dragged along behind her choices like unwilling passengers in a sinking car. I thought of them often, quietly, privately, in the spaces between my own growing life. But I didn't reach out, and I didn't regret the choice. Not really. Not where Jennifer was concerned. One late afternoon, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset. The sky looked like something painted in watercolor, streaks of tangerine and rose melting into a soft purple horizon. The trees swayed slowly, and the air smelled faintly of pine and warm earth. It was the kind of evening that would have been unimaginable in my old life. A gentle breeze moved across my skin, and my thoughts drifted, uninvited, into what-ifs. What if I had said yes that day at my parents' house? What if I had let Jennifer and her kids move into my apartment for free? What if I had become the solution again? The vision came easily. I would have been barely scraping by, pouring every paycheck into subsidizing Jennifer's life while she demanded more. The apartment would be trashed. My management company would quit. My mental health would spiral. My mortgage would suffocate me. My career would slip. My independence would evaporate. And worse, Jennifer would still take everything for granted. My parents would still expect me to fix her chaos, and I'd be drowning under responsibilities that were never mine to begin with. I felt a chill thinking about it. That alternate miserable version of my life. That version where I was trapped in a cycle of obligation, guilt, and manipulation. Where I existed only in relation to other people's needs. This quiet house, this stable job, this independence wasn't selfishness. It was survival. It was choosing a future instead of trying to repair someone else's past. It was choosing my life over a lifelong performance of being the good daughter, the responsible sister, the woman who never said no. I had said no, finally, and the world had cracked open into something gentler. But the kids, they were the one thing that still whispered at the edges of my peace. They had done nothing wrong. They hadn't chosen their mother's entitlement. They hadn't chosen the fight, the arrest, the consequences. Sometimes I wondered if they remembered that day clearly. The way tension filled the room like smoke, the flashing lights, the handcuffs. Did they remember my face? Did they blame me? Did they cry afterward for reasons they didn't understand? Or were they just trying to survive, like everyone else? Sometimes I found myself imagining the future. Maybe one day when they were adults, they might look for me, want answers, want the truth instead of a story crafted by a mother drowning in denial. Maybe they'd want to know me, not the villain version, but the real version. If they ever reached out, I knew one thing for certain. I would open the door, I would listen, I would try. But I wouldn't apologize for protecting myself. Not anymore. Aunt Margaret called again one evening. Her voice came through warm and steady, the way a lighthouse looks to ships in fog. "Evelyn, do you ever regret calling the police?" she asked gently. The question didn't make me defensive, it made me thoughtful. I let the silence stretch as I considered my answer, not out of guilt, but honesty. Finally, I said, "No, I don't regret it." Margaret exhaled softly, like she'd been holding her breath for my response. "If I hadn't done that," I continued, "Jennifer would still be walking all over me. Mom would still be enabling her. I'd still be losing myself trying to fix a life that wasn't mine." She crossed a line, Margaret, a big one, and someone needed to show her that. "You did what none of them ever had the courage to do," she said. "You told Jennifer and your mother that actions have consequences. You saved yourself, Evelyn. That was long overdue." I blinked hard, staring at the soft orange glow fading outside my window. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just keep your peace. You earned it." After we hung up, I went back out onto the porch. The sky was darkening. Crickets hummed. Stars pricked through the twilight. For the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't waiting for the next disaster, the next demand, the next guilt trip, the next crisis I'd be expected to solve. I was living my own life. Quiet, steady, untangled. Some people might call it cold to walk away from family. Some might say I should have forgiven them, given another chance, tried again. But those people didn't live my life. They didn't hear my mother's voice every time I succeeded, reminding me who I owed. They didn't see Jennifer's entitlement grow like a shadow that swallowed everything around her. They didn't carry the years of guilt, manipulation, expectations, and emotional debt. They didn't watch their hard-earned home being treated like a free resource. They didn't stand in front of police officers while their sister screamed. I had made my choice, and I would make it again. I finished my dinner, washed the dishes, turned on a movie, sat in my quiet, warm house, everything in it mine, every piece earned, every corner safe. Outside, the night was still, calm, undemanding. I leaned back into the couch and closed my eyes for a second. I was home, truly home, finally free.